know is about the survivors of Virgen de la Asunción. Let me remind you some logistic issues before we officially start with the presentation. First of all, this event is being live broadcast via Facebook. In the chat, I'm going to write the Facebook page so that you can follow us there if that's what you prefer. We will also be monitoring questions in the comments section in case you want to ask something if you're there. If you're here in Zoom, you can ask your questions via chat or you can go directly to the Q&A section. Let me remind you that this event is going to be available both in English and Spanish. On the bottom of your page, you will see different icons. There's one that looks like a globe or a world. It says interpretation, and there you can choose the language of your preference. Almost all presentations will be in Spanish. One is going to be in English. So without further ado, let me welcome Jorge Cardona. It's a great honor to have you here today, Jorge. Jorge Cardona is an associate member of the International Institute and member of the Committee on the Right of the Child. Thank you very much, Jorge, for being here today. The floor is yours. Thank you very much for the invitation. Unfortunately, we are here to discuss a not very happy topic. But I still thank you for the invitation. I'm going to explain you how the Committee on the Rights of the Child addressed the situation in Hogar Seguro Virgen de la Asunción in 2017. The committee from the beginning considered that there were three very important dimensions in terms of this facts. One is the violence dimension. The facts were very, very serious in terms of violence. So the committee said that there was unhuman treatment and torture. But this is just the point of the iceberg. There are many things happening behind. Therefore, the committee from the beginning urged the state to write a comprehensive strategy in order to stop violence and abuse against children in institutions in order to make sure that no similar situations ever happened again. The state was also asked to carry out a fair and unbiased investigation to sanction everyone who was responsible, and that they had to do a psychosocial evaluation of all survivors and victims of the fire. And they had to help all families. They had to receive the corresponding repair. That, together with creating comprehensive programs, following up on all the children that were being moved from that institution to other institutions, ways to make sure that they were going to be protective and avoiding impunity. So the idea was seeing this from a perspective of eliminating violence in all institutions. That's first of all. And second, to repair because of the issues that corresponded to the state and that could be thought as torture. The second dimension was addressing children who were separated from their families or who had no families. This excessive institutionalization as a generalized practice in Guatemala. Children who have no parents always end up in institutions. So the committee asked the state to write down an on institutionalization policy, to adopt a strategy to foster these children in other ways. All resources had to be allocated to create alternative solutions. If children cannot be with their biological families, there needs to be another family solution instead of sending them to an institution. And we asked to stop this institution policy. We asked the state to set a schedule to close the existing institutions. And it asked the state not to put any more children inside the institutions. That was the second dimension. The third dimension has to do with children in vulnerable situations, specifically children with disabilities. The committee is aware that there is an overrepresentation of children with disabilities in these institutions, and they're usually targets of violence. Therefore, we asked the state explicitly to ensure that all children with disabilities can live in a family environment and under the same conditions as other children. They need to provide proper training to foster parents if necessary as well. So the committee's point of view is let's eradicate violence and this violent culture. Let's repair for what was already made. Two, let's stop sending children to institutions. Let's start having children in family environments. Let's allocate enough resources. And three, let's pay specific attention to children with disabilities because they are the ones who are suffering more violence. They are the ones who are sent to institutions. So the committee urged the state to stop the situation. So that's what we asked the state, and that's what the state need to do and report. Thank you very much, Jorge, for that first introduction. You are telling us about the obligations from the state and the still open items or pending topics related to the case. We still need to investigate and prosecute the authors of the violations of the fire, and the state still needs to create a comprehensive strategy. We're going to have different speakers talking about those open items, but having your perspective is great. It's very good to have an overview from the committee. So thank you very much, Jorge. And now I'm going to pass the floor to Eric Rosenthal. He is Executive Director of Disability Rights International. He was in Guatemala when the fire happened, and he is the author of the I report called After the Fire. It was published a week after the fire. So thank you very much, Eric.
Thank you very much, Priscilla. Thank everyone for joining us today. It's an honor, a very sad honor, unfortunately, to be speaking today with my esteemed colleagues, Jorge Cardona, the fabulous and courageous activists in Guatemala, and the family members who are speaking out. My colleague, Priscilla Rodriguez, has put together a report that is powerful and important and is necessary for the public to understand. That years after the fire in Hogar Seguro, there still has been no accountability. There has been no effort to find out who was truly responsible for the abuse and trafficking of these girls. There has been no real criminal responsibility for their deaths. Indeed, the girls have essentially been blamed. The families have been terrorized. There have been unexplained deaths among family members and fear among those who speak out. It is the reason why this event is so important, that people are overcoming their fear to demand accountability. The children who died in that fire, the girls who survived, we are not going to survive. We are not going to forget. We are going to keep banging loudly and making sure that the public remembers those who died and that the government is held accountable for bringing about any measure of justice. People with disabilities deserve better than to be placed in harm's way. Children deserve better than to be placed in institutions. As we heard from Jorge Cardona, it is no longer acceptable for children to be put away in institutions, whether they have a disability or not. I was in the Hogar Seguro the day after the fire. I could still smell the burning, the charred ashes. I looked into the eyes of the children who were there and I saw their fear of what stood ahead of them. Have they now been reintegrated into families? Have they seen justice? Unfortunately, it's sad to say they have not. So we are not only demanding that those who died be remembered, we are demanding that the survivors be remembered and be supported, and that no country, Guatemala or anywhere else, be allowed to throw away the lives of any child with a disability or without a disability. Every child deserves to grow up in a family, and there is no reason why we can't fulfill that promise. So thank you for reading this report, for listening closely to the people who are courageously speaking out today, and let us not stop listening until justice is served. Thank you.
Muchísimas gracias, Eric.
Thank you very much, Eric, for that important call to the state. It's important that they make sure that there's justice and that they adopt all necessary measures for this not to happen again, for no child or adolescent to be in an institution. They should freely and safely grow within a family environment. Let me introduce myself. I'm Priscila Rodriguez, Joint Director of Disability Rights International, and I will briefly present the report, the main findings. And after my presentation, we will listen to a human rights organization that has been fighting against violations to human rights for years. They're working in this case together with family members. They are all here. We have the great honor of listening to their thoughts. On March 7, 2017, children reported abuse, trafficking, and violation in Virgen or Hogar Seguro Virgen de la Asunción. As a sanction, and as we all know, 56 girls were locked down in a tiny auditorium for the night. On 8 March, there was a fire and 41 of them died. The Human Rights Prosecution Office and Disability Rights International got different cautionary measures. So, together with the Committee on the Rights of the Child, we asked the state to reintegrate these children safely into families. This report details how the survivors of the fire and children and adolescents that were in Virgen de la Asunción are still at risk. And it talks about these important things that still have to be done. They haven't, even though they are part of the recommendations from the Inter-American Commission and the Committee on the Rights of the Child. 600 children were in the institution, according to the state. But before, in previous reports, we read 800. So let's say it's 600 children. Out of these 600 children, detained children, because we think that they were actually detained inside the institution, 61 have died, 10%, some of them under violent circumstances. The government has activated an amber warning for 94 girls and boys who are missing. Well, actually, some of them are still missing. 160 girls and boys are in institutions and at risk, the large majority of them with disabilities. 4 years later, the death of the 41 girls and adolescents and the physical and psychological damage of the survivors are still under impunity. 9 people have been accused, including the director of Virgen de la Asunción, but because of minor crimes related to negligence, but torture, trafficking, physical and sexual abuse have not been investigated, even murder of those who were detained there. The director of the minor unit of the General Prosecutor's Office have been accused for murder and mistreatment, but even though he is accused, he's still in his current position. The state has not supported families. So families are at risk when looking for justice, as we will listen after my presentation. We will have some mothers and one uncle here. Two mothers have been killed and another mother has been threatened and physically abused, together with her children. In this Disability Rights International report, we urge the state to fulfill the recommendations from the Committee on the Rights of the Child and the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights. We want them to ensure the security of those families seeking for justice, to find the survivors and ex-detained that have not been found, create support for the families within the community, and support for all children and adolescents that need to be reintegrated or that were reintegrated. That it investigates the deaths of those children inside the institution and of those family members seeking for justice, and to prosecute those responsible for the fire, and to sanction the system that allowed these severe abuses to happen against the children and adolescents in the institution. So thank you very much for being here, and hopefully you can all read the report. Now it's a great pleasure for me to pass the floor to Juanita Perez. She is a lawyer from a human rights law firm, and she's going to give us a broader overview. We realize that our voices are important when they don't want us to speak. And this is what Malala once said. On 8 March 2017, 41 voices were silenced, and 15 survivors wanted to speak up, and the state tried to silence them as well. Hello, everyone. I'm Juanita Perez. I'm a lawyer from the legal firm of human rights that's supporting 14 survivors, victims of the facts that happened in Hogar Seguro Virgen de la Asunción. In a comprehensive framework, we registered the facts of 7 and 8 of March 2017 in Virgen de la Asunción as a result of many issues in the comprehensive protection system. And it happened because there's a lack of mechanism protecting children and adolescents. Many children and adolescents are still vulnerable. It seems to be a good system protecting children, but that's not the case. And this case is just one example of this bad situation. Many years have gone by and the process is still open. It's still broken even. And the process is split into three stages, and none of the accused people have been processed and they have not been called to explain what happened. So there's no criminal responsibility. The first group of those who are accused include high leaders, even the director of Hogar Seguro, Líder de la Asunción, and they are waiting for their process. Still, this process has been suspended 3 times. And now they just said that this public debate will be on March 29, 2022. And it says that they are going to appoint a judge, but we still have many months to go. So it's important to mention that this has not happened because the state has not been able to appoint a judge. I don't know why a judge has not been appointed, but because of this, the trial has been rescheduled. Therefore, the victims are being re-victimized. There's no justice and there's no state response, and there's no repair for the victims. In the second group of accused people, prosecutors of the Attorney General's office have been accused. People from the Human Rights Commission and two members of the National Police. as well as some staff from Hogar Seguro Virgen de la Asunción. This group is in an ongoing trial. Evidence is given right now, but the process has not continued because of different circumstances. There is deficiency in how trials are being managed, and these trials are over and over postponed. So 2 years have gone by, and 15 times trials have been canceled. Those 15 times have not allowed that process to be over by now. The third group has the judge of peace of the municipality who were not defending children, and the coordinator of the women's area of Hogar Seguro Virgen de la Asunción. But still, this is the group that has had zero progress. The first trial lasted 1 year and 8 months and nothing happened. Why? Because it was suspended and rescheduled. It has been rescheduled 10 times. So until January 24th, 2020, this third group was going to be judged and then nothing happened. So the point is that we're very concerned because there's no progress. Violations of girls and adolescents continue, and these girls died, and they still say that these are minor crimes. They still don't see how serious these crimes are. Here we're talking about torture, violations of many rights, abuse, and many other things. Even people have been killed. So here we see that human rights have not been respected. Therefore, 41 adolescents died, and there are 15 survivors with physical and psychological consequences. The state is not protecting children and adolescents, even though they say they're doing. To be honest, they are not fulfilling the needs of victims and families. We still need to have a more robust protection system. Institutions have created no changes to protect children and adolescents in Guatemala. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Juanita, for this important reminder. Thank you for telling us what the authorities still need to do and haven't done to make sure that there's full justice. And I want to thank everyone for the questions in the chat. At the end of the presentations, we're going to read them. Now, I'm going to introduce Roxana Tojil. She's mother of one of Virgen de la Asunción girls. Thank you very much for being so brave to be here. Thank you very much for being part of the process. Thank you for seeking for justice for your girl. So the floor is yours. Thank you very much, everyone. I'm glad to address you all. I'm mother of Mirta. My name is Roxana. We are gathered here seeking for justice for all girls, those who are alive and those who are dead. Truth be told, there are many different cases. But if I talk about my daughter, let me say that she didn't receive healthy food. There was no light, no electricity. She didn't have a good place to sleep, and there was no way out. But they were not detained or arrested. They were protected by the government. But that's something that the government does not say. So they were not safe, as I already said. They had no protection. They didn't have a good life. Despite that, those who were taking care of them say they did. When she called me on the phone, she only had 3 minutes. And if she said bad things about the institution, he was beaten, sanctioned, and he didn't receive any food. Once my daughter told me that sometimes girls had to spend the night outside. She always fought with those taking care of her so that she wasn't taken out. And sometimes they were trafficking these girls. They were taken out and they were victims of trafficking. And she used to tell me that they all had their clothes, but shoes were big, clothes were big. They never allowed me to take her own clothes, so she never wore proper clothes. When I went there with clothes, they were like, no, this cannot get in, this cannot get in. So they never allowed me to bring her clothes or shoes. I even had to talk to one person who was working inside for her to let me bring her underwear. That was the first time my daughter used new underwear. And it was all locked. There was no freedom. It's not as if girls were in a public garden playing. No, no, there was no area for them to play, to run. And every time I went in, they checked everything, even my underwear, just to make sure that I wasn't taking anything in. So girls were like detainees, they were as in jail. My girl told me lots of things. She told me that there was no freedom. And supposedly they had court procedures, but she never went to any. For example, I went to my girl's court procedure. She didn't get there, and they used to tell me that the process was canceled. I was lied many times. They made me sign a paper for my girl to be there. I didn't know. They convinced me with words, with fake information, and I signed. And it truly hurt. And it hurts still that my daughter isn't here. But it's not our fault. It's the state's fault. The state killed them. And those who killed her have not been prosecuted. They need to be in jail. They definitely do because they're not. Those people are free. They're at home. And that truly hurts. It hurts us because they're free and we're hurt and the girls are dead. I went to the hospital looking for my girl and I saw how they were all burned. It was horrible. But thank you very much for giving me this space to talk. I know that justice will be made, not only here, but in all countries where this is happening. So it's good that everyone knows what we went through. Thank you. Thank you very much, Roxana. We are very sorry for your loss, and we will help you to seek for justice, not only for your daughter, but for the life of all those who died and for those who are being abused. And as you said, the state was the one doing it. And now I'm going to pass the floor to Vianney Hernandez. She is also a mother of one of the victims. So, Vianney, thank you very much for your courage, for your strength, and we'll give you the floor. Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for allowing us to be here. Thank you for allowing us to speak about everything that has been happening to us, about the fact that the court procedures have been postponed over and over. Thank you for allowing us to speak about our tragedy. For us, mothers, this has been very sad. It's sad to know what happened under the state responsibility. It's sad to recognize everything that happened to us since the procedure started. They haven't allowed us to truly express the pain that we're going through. We were told that we couldn't cry, that judges cannot see tears in our eyes, that they couldn't see our expression, that we couldn't do and say absolutely anything. And sometimes we couldn't even talk, even if we wanted to. But we were there, and I felt as if I couldn't say anything. It was frustrating because we couldn't express what we were feeling. No one was listening to us. We felt bad, mad, hurt because of everything that was going on. And they were rejecting us as mothers. They were not giving us our right of seeking for justice. So there were also many issues when the court procedure started. We were mistreated by a judge. People were treating us badly as well. And we tried to go there with pictures of our daughters. Why did they care? We were not going to damage anyone if we were there with the pictures of our daughters, because those were our daughters and they were responsible for what happened to them. But they told us that we couldn't get in with the pictures. They said either you take the pictures out or you cannot be part of this hearing. We were threatened as well. Some people involved in the process have been threatening us. I reported someone involved in the process because they have been controlling my life. They have been trying to harass me, but I won't allow them to do so because I will continue seeking for justice. I will continue with my fight. I will continue fighting for my daughter. I am here representing other mothers who are not here right now, who might be far away. So I truly try to speak up for them, for those who cannot raise their voice, for those who are not here, and for those who are. And then the government tries to blame the surviving girls. They only care about what they did inside. They raised their voice, they spoke up. So they only care about what the girls did. And they also want to blame us as mothers. They say that it's our fault that the girls died. And they also want to blame the survivors, as I said. They want to demolish the place. There has been no hearing. Hearings are postponed over and over, and sometimes mothers have no resources to come here and fight. There are many mothers who are afraid as well. They truly don't want to go to the hearings, to the procedures. They're afraid because they know they're fighting against this monster, which is the state. They are the criminals. They are the ones who killed our daughters. They are responsible for what truly happened on the 7th and 8th, and even before, because they were victims of many other things before the fire. So Yeah, there's a guilty body, and that's the state. The state is responsible for the 7th and 8th of March massacre. Thank you very much for everything that you're doing for us, and thank you for listening. Thank you very much for being here, Vianney, mother of Ashley Rodriguez. Thank you very much for raising your voice for your girl and for those who can't. Thank you also for talking about this stigma that survivors are facing, that victims and families are facing as well. Thank you for telling us how the state is aiming to blame you and them for what happened, even though it's their responsibility. So thank you very much for fighting. And I'm going to pass the floor to Emitio Marroquin. He's a family member. So thank you very much also for being here, for raising your voice, and for the effort that you have been carrying out these last 4 years. We'll give you the floor. Thank you very much. Good morning. My name is Emilio Marroquin. I'm a family member of Jocelyn, one of the girls who died in Hogar Seguro Virgen de la Asunción. I'm here to claim for justice. The justice that we deserve, the justice that we have not seen. We're still waiting for an official hearing, and we want to make sure that there are no threats against us, no harassment, no abuse. This is no revenge. It's not that we are aiming to have an unfair process. No, we want everything to be well done. We just want to ask for justice, for information. Sometimes we don't even know why were our children there. We want to make sure, as I said, that they're not against us for speaking up. There is a supervision mechanism in all centers because, well, that's what we want, because there's still lots of abuse. I don't know if you heard, but a couple of days ago, 14 girls ran away from one institution. And this is because of the abuse that they're going through. We want the support of other mothers, of the media. And we just want to make sure that the same situation doesn't happen again. We want to shed light on this situation and many other situations. As others already said, the hearings are postponed over and over. There's nothing clear. The case is not moving forward. We know that you are issuing your report and that you want to help us for this to happen. For us and for the law firm representing us, because we are represented by a law firm. Well, the law firm is representing 56 victims. I mean, I'm not here only representing my girl or Vianney's girl. No, we're here to talk and speak up for every girl, for 56 girls who died in Hogar Seguro. And we realize that there are institutions who want to help, who want to support us. And that's great because this has been very painful for us. I mean, everything that happened on March 7 and 8 is very hurtful. So I truly want to take advantage of this time to thank you all because This has been a very complicated situation. It has been a sad crisis for mothers, for family members, people, mothers have been killed, and that's obviously unfair. So I want to thank you for your support. In Guatemala, there are many institutions that have supported us as well, and I also want to thank them. So thank you for everything that you've done. Thank you very much, Emilio. Thank you for joining the fight. Thank you for understanding that this is everyone's fight. It's not only a fight from mothers or family members, but it's a fight from all of us who are part of this society and aim to ask justice to the state, a state that's not doing anything because of the abuse and deaths that happened, not only in this case, but in many others, as you were mentioning. And now, I once again want to ask those who are here with us. We're going to open the floor for a Q&A session. We have one question from Veronica, and it seems that Mariana is raising her hand. So first I'm going to read the first question for Juanita, and then I'll pass the floor to Maria. The question is, nowadays, do we have a judge appointed for the trial of March 29th or not yet? Oh, I think they got disconnected, but they're back. Juanita, can you hear me? Yes, Priscilla, we're here. There's a question for you. I'm going to read it. Is there a new judge appointed for the trial of March 29th or not yet? Well, according to what we know, there's going to be a public debate on March 29th, 2022. But we still have no judge appointed. This is going to be in the seventh court, but we still have no judge. Thank you very much. Mariana, would you like to ask something? Because I think you're raising your hand. Well, maybe not. I want to thank for all comments in the chat and also in the Facebook Live. One is asking the Human Rights Prosecutor's Office to run inspections at homes. This is very important, mainly when talking about the fact that there are still 160 children in institutions. The RI has been following up on this. We were following up on these homes before the pandemic and these institutions before the pandemic, and the institutions still show many of the risk factors that Virgen de la Asunción had. But now there's restricted access because of the pandemic. Thus, it's more important to monitor those who are inside the institutions. Thank you for that comment. Paola Albani from Ruda is saying the report says that criminals are only being accused for minor crimes, and families have stated that there were situations, abuses, and violations. One mother just talked about prostitution and trafficking. What new information do you have about the topic? It seems that the legal firm of human rights and mothers can help us a bit more. Maybe they have more information about the systematic abuses and generalized abuses that were already happening in Virgen de la Asunción even before the fire, because this is why we started seeing girls fighting on the 7th and the sanctions of the 8th, such as being locked in the auditorium. Juanita, family members, would you like to add something? First of all, thanks to all who are online asking and giving us your comments. As the process is stopped, we don't have new information, but we will gladly give you more information as the process and the debate continues. In the debate, we're going to be talking about how serious all the abuses were in Hogar Seguro Virgen de la Asunción. Thank you very much. And I also want to highlight that it's very concerning that there is no specific investigation and no serious investigation around the abuses, violations, sexual abuse, prostitution, trafficking of boys, girls, and adolescents in Virgen de la Asunción. So that's very important when talking about justice. I mean, there's no investigation about these topics yet. And I think that the Human Rights Prosecutor's Office was carrying out some investigations, or at least they have open reports related to these abuses. So it would be good if we could find out what's happening with these former reports. Mayra Jimenez raised her hand. So Mayra, we give you the floor. I'm actually not sure if we can pass them the floor because they're not panelists but audience, but they can write in the chat because we saw that she wrote some support messages to the mothers. Maybe she can give us her question via chat as well. If there are other questions or comments, please don't hesitate. We're also in Facebook and we're reading all your questions in Facebook as well.
So Rachel, we need to know if can people who are raising their hands, can they speak? Sorry, I'm making this question here. También aprovechar ahorita para dar la palabra a... ok, lo que me comentan es que...
What I'm being told is that those who are raising their hand and want to participate cannot talk because of the way the webinar is set. So you cannot open your mic, but we want to ask you to type everything in the chat. And we'll see if Jorge can give us some closing remarks. I'm also going to ask Eric Rosenthal to give us some closing remarks, and I'm going to ask the legal firm and the mothers and uncle to address the audience. So thank you very much, Jorge, for having joined us. And we gave you the floor for some last remarks. Thank you very much, Priscilla. I would like to close with a key and fundamental idea. The Convention on the Rights of the Child, Article 20, states that children who are temporary or forever separated from their family, or those who cannot stay in a family environment, or I mean their family, they are entitled to the protection and special support of the state. That is, the state is responsible for those children who are in the protection system. They have more responsibility for them than for others who are living with their families. The state has a special responsibility with those children. We're not talking about those children to whom charity is being given. No, we're saying that the state is responsible for those children. So they are the children that should be better taken care of. So when they do not fulfill the obligation, the responsibility is even higher. It's much more higher for the state as an institution and for everyone. I mean, people, individuals working in the state and who did something for this to happen. If committing a crime against someone is bad, it's even worse when you're responsible for those that you're affecting. So we cannot accept this situation. It's impossible to think that these families won't be repaired for the violations that were committed. And it's impossible to think that urgent measures are not adopted in order to make sure that this does not happen again. So they need to be responsible. Everyone from the government responsible for the protection system should be accounted responsible. I mean, even the president if necessary. Thank you very much, Jorge, for that call and those words that remind us what the state needs to do. And before passing the floor to Eric Rosenthal, I want to read Mayra Jimenez's comment because she was raising her hand. So Mayra, thank you very much for writing this in the chat. As volunteers accompanying mothers since the moment of the incident, we support and back up the families of the 56 girls. We have seen them gone through very complicated situations. The legal system of the country is not paying attention to them. 4 years and 7 months, and we still see no justice. So Eric Rosenthal, let me pass the floor to you for your last remarks.
Thank you. We've heard some very powerful and disturbing facts about what is going on in Hogar Seguro. Ask yourselves, how is it that girls could have been abused and trafficked when they were under government care in a government facility? There has to be government participation, acquiescence, and probably active profiteering by exploiting those girls. Where is the government responsibility? The fact is that one of the key people charged with making this abuse possible is now in charge of the prosecutions. The government is responsible for that. And it is a sign that they are not taking it seriously. They are thumbing their noses at justice, and they are telling the survivors and the family members of those who died that they do not care. Jorge Cardona, from the highest UN Human Rights Authority on Children, tell us there's a highest level of government responsibility, and yet the Guatemala government is telling us they do not care. We've taken a case to the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights, which has ordered its most urgent precautionary measures to protect the survivors, and yet the government does not care. There must be international accountability. The international community must hold Guatemala responsible. And now we at DRI are taking an additional case for the failure to prosecute, for the failure to bring about justice. We will not forget. We can only believe that these acts of cover-up are a sign of high-level government complicity, and we will not give up until justice is served. I am so sorry. Let me just add my condolences to the family members of those who died. I am so sorry for your loss. This did not need to happen. May their memory be a blessing and be a reminder of what we must do for all children to make sure they live in families and are never placed in institutions. No child, no person with a disability should ever be placed in one of these places. These dangers are foreseeable and must be stopped. Thank you.
Muchas gracias a Eric por esas palabras.
Eric, thank you very much for your words. Thank you for your support message to the families, not only the families related to this case, but the families who are separated from their children because they have been sent to institutions. Verónica Orantes is asking, what are the main consequences that you see because of the fact that there has been no justice? For me, the main consequence is that children and adolescents who are now in other institutions and who were in Hogar Seguro, I mean, not only the survivors of Hogar Seguro Virgen de la Asunción, but they're all at risk. There was sexual abuse, physical abuse, trafficking, prostitution. So if those who are responsible remain free, they will continue abusing other girls, boys, and adolescents. This will continue. We will see this over and over in other institutions. So this might be happening in every institution under the state. We can also talk about the damage to the family members seeking for justice. They were hurt from the beginning, and actually I'm going to pass the floor to them so to listen to their last remarks. Maybe they can talk a little bit of the emotional damage they have suffered when seeing that this case is still open and under impunity. And in addition to asking that to mothers, what is the consequence of having no justice? I also want to ask Juanita a question from the chat. Why do you think that the former president, Jamie Morales, has been protected so that he's not investigated? How do you see the situation from the international community? And talking about the international community, we don't only need to talk about the impunity for the president, but for everyone responsible. We have been reporting that over and over, but I'm sure that the law firm can give us more information of how the former president has not been investigated. And there's another comment here that is a comment from Mayra, and she talks about the responsibility of the president. So let me pass the floor to the law firm and see if they have more information. And maybe one of the mothers or the uncle want to talk about the consequences of the lack of justice. Thank you. Thank you very much. It's important to highlight the impunity that we have. This was very serious and it needs to be investigated as a serious issue. We need to have a thorough investigation because, as we were saying at the beginning, we have 3 groups of people that will be prosecuted. But that's not enough. We need to have a deep investigation, a thorough investigation, because all of those who were responsible for what happened in Hogar Seguro Virgen de la Asunción need to be accountable. I mean, they need to be accountable for what happened. We need to continue with the process so that all of those who were responsible go under a fair process. The state should give the victims the corresponding response and the corresponding repair. Juanita, there's another question related. It's from Evelyn Bosch. What's your balance up to date? Well, the progress, as I said, has been very slow. The first group which is the one that has progressed the most in terms of the process, is still waiting for their hearing. Many years have gone by and nothing has truly happened. The second group has not been heard in an intermediate hearing. We still don't know what the ruling will be. And then there's this third group that has had no progress at all. This is a very concerning situation. Years and years have gone by and nothing has happened. There's no ruling against those who were responsible. Therefore, we have a very negative balance. I mean, because it's a very negative progress.
Gracias, Juanita.
Thank you,
Agradecemos
Juanita.
el mensaje de Ada que nos dice que la PDH además debe auditar a la Secretaría de Bienestar Social por el mal uso de su presupuesto.
Here it also says
Algunos
that
hogares por la
there
venta
should be
2022
audits
2023
being carried out to see what's truly happening in terms of budget
También
allocation and practices in these shelters and institutions and homes.
comenta que las
Mayra
familias
Jimenez is saying that the families of other girls
también están apoyando a Vianey, Milo y Roxana.
are supporting Vianney, Milo, and Roxana, even though they're not here. So yeah, that's true. Thank you very much.
Se acabó el tiempo, ya son las 2
Okay, so we're
son las 10 de la mañana en Guatemala. Agradecemos
about to close because it's already 10 a.m. in
mucho
Guatemala. But we truly want to thank everyone who joined us here. Thank you, media, NGOs, activists, defenders. Thank you very much for being here, for listening. Hopefully you can read the report.
en el chat aquí
It
y
is
también en la página de Facebook,
included in the Facebook
en nuestra
webpage. We sent it via chat. And in the chat, I'm going to give you our webpage. There you can also find the report. And I want to thank our speakers, Jorge Cardona. Thank you, former member of the Committee on the Rights of the Child, Eric Rosenthal, Executive Director. Thank you very much. And Juanita Perez from the law firm. And we mainly want to thank the mothers and family members. We appreciate you. We respect you. Thank you for continuing fighting for justice. Roxana, Vianey, Emilio, thank you very much for being so brave, so courageous, and thank you very much for having been here. So without any further ado, we're here for you. Let us know if you have further questions. You have our webpage. I'm writing it in the chat right now. So contact us if you have further questions. I'm also sending you my email. And you can also reach us via Facebook. So please don't hesitate to ask. We're here for you. We're here at your disposal. Thank you very much, everyone. Once again, have a great day. And we will continue all together looking for justice.
Thank you.